All right. Hello, everyone. Come on in. It's time for MECCA Moment. It's, what is it, May 15th? We're in the second week of May. I can't believe it, how fast time has gone. We'll be at the end of the year in no time. Today, we are talking about dealing with conflict with your family. Not everyone is out there making TikToks with their family and having a good time. There's real conflict. And when you have a pandemic like we have, and you have to be in tight quarters with everyone, it's bound to be a conflict. Today we have Kim Edwards and Dr. Mercedes Ebanks from the MECCA Group. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
So we're talking about conflict today. I know everyone's excited about that because, conflict happens outside of just being in tight quarters all day, every day. But imagine the compound circumstances of not leaving your house minimally for an undetermined amount of time. It can be a challenge. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. Dr. Ebanks, you want to introduce Miss Kim Edwards to us?
Yes, I certainly would like to introduce Kim Edwards. She has really been an asset to the MECCA Group. She's been with the MECCA Group for about 1 year now, serving in the capacity as a speech and language pathologist. But she has almost 10 years of experience in the clinical arena with home-based health, school, skilled nursing facilities, private clinics, and public schools. Ms. Edwards received a Bachelor's of Science as well as a Master's of Education in Speech and Language Pathology from the University of Virginia, as well as a graduate certificate in Applied Behavior Analysis from George Mason University. So you do ABA work as well as speech and language therapy. That's excellent. Thank you for being a part of the MECCA team.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, she's well qualified to talk about lots of issues, but today we're talking about conflict management, managing family problems, challenges, stuff happening. How can we create an environment that minimizes family conflict, especially during this time right now?
Yeah, really minimizing the opportunity to engage in conflict. A lot of times we think about what our life used to look like, right? You think about the schedules, you think about going places here and there and coordinating. And now you're not going anywhere at all. You're staying in the house, you're staying in your apartment. So really kind of manipulating that home environment to support good social engagement and behavior, really between any and everyone that's going to be in that home. So whether that, might look like partitions or schedules, things like that, different conflicts arise, as you said, no matter who's going to be at the house. It could be with your dog, it could be with your child, it could be with, that in-law that's living with you now. It's really a lot of aspects to conflict that we're going to hopefully be able to talk through today and really help some people out with what they can do to minimize it a little bit.
You're not used to, being in your home all day. You're working at home. If you have children, you're managing your children. If you're not used to being able to walk away, how detrimental has this been to, creating an environment that is free of conflict or lowers conflict?
Yeah, if you want to really kind of walk away, I would definitely suggest creating those partitions. I always tell parents, create a space that's for you, but also a space that's for your child. Think about maybe creating either a room if you have the space for a room, but if you don't, create a little alcove in a room that you can set up for them and their materials, but also gives you that space to kind of walk away, have that little bit of respite.
So let's talk about if you have extended family, or if you're staying with your siblings, or your child's relationships with their brothers and sisters. How can you create an environment that's best for those relationships?
Yes, that's a good question. Sibling rivalry is something that is near and dear to my heart. My brother and I probably never got along when we were children, and that was before the pandemic. So thinking about whether or not they're sharing devices, because now that's a thing, whether or not they're sharing rooms, those are really areas where there's got to be a high traffic area, right? A lot of potential conflict or just kind of rubbing each other the wrong way. So really thinking of, as a parent, of course, validating those emotions because you probably feel a little bit too, but really figuring out how to set some of those concrete boundaries to create that behavior that you do want to see. So creating a schedule is a huge thing. Having that child be a part of it or children be a part of the schedule so they can see, you know, I'm blue, my brother is green, my sister's yellow. Do I get to play with the iPad today or do I get to play with it for this hour? Or do I get to go do something with my books and my toys for this hour? And they can kind of pick and choose. So it limits their physical proximity together. And also setting aside some kind of outside time and making that a part of that rotation. You know, how much do we want to enjoy outside, even with the social distancing? So make it part of the day, every day.
So when you're dealing with conflict with, especially with your children, and you're coming up with consequences, is sending your child to a room, you know, the best thing when they've been in their room all day, every day? What are some other ways to kind of get your kids back on track without actually kind of
reprimand to what they've already been doing?
Right. Like, there's nowhere to go, Mom. Like, I've been in my room all day, and now like it's starting to look like prison. So what are some other ways to like what are other consequences possible?
Yeah. And even not really like, I'm thinking of kind of creating that out, you know, that kind of like a reset, so to speak, area. So that you, like you say, you don't really want to give them a consequence that looks very similar, feels very similar to what they've been doing, because then you're not going to be able to differentiate between what I did and what I should have been doing. But really kind of create that respite area that you can take a break. And I always say, like, make it like an oasis, so to speak. So, you know, you're not saying, oh, you did something bad, you're going to this area. It's, hey, it looks like you've gotten a little frustration. It looks like you might need a break. Why don't you take a break in this area where there's calm music, maybe do a puzzle. You know, a puzzle will take a good 20, 30 minutes, depending on developmental skill. And hopefully the other sibling can get that 20 minutes to calm down.
Right.
And really, I love the idea of also kind of like creating projects that siblings can give one another. You know, like whether it's helping somebody with cookies and I made a cookie for you, you get to decorate one for me. You know, mom or dad or auntie gets to kind of oversee and have a little snack too. Some opportunities to kind of get away, but not feel like it's too punitive, especially since you can't go too far.
I'm definitely for mommy and daddy sharing in the snacks. That's something
Everyone gets a cookie.
Everyone
worked hard today.
Yeah, teamwork, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, now the weather's getting nice. It's about 80 degrees here in New York City. I'm sure it's warm there in Washington, D.C.
It is totally.
So outside playtime is going to be one of those things that you could reward children with for being conflict-free, or at least constructively dealing with conflict.
Yeah. Even say, hey, you spent 30 minutes away from your sibling. Let's praise that.
Right. Being nice and playing nicely and sharing your toys. Yeah, definitely those things. Okay, so we know that there are some families that have integrated grandparents into the daily living. How do you create an environment that has multi-generational family members living under one roof?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because I think especially in this day and age, it's not atypical to see multi-generational family dynamics and blends, whether it's in-laws or aunts, uncles, it might be cousins, you know. And I think that especially with the current climate, and noting that, you know, we do have to be cognizant safety-wise and health-wise for those older generations. Unfortunately, that shift takes place where they themselves may not feel like they could support in that same way they used to. I know sometimes that used to be the childcare, was going to grandma, grandpa's house, or sometimes grandma, grandpa stay inside and they help the kids. But now everyone's inside, everyone's helping. How can we still keep them feeling like they're not really isolated or left out? So I think, kind of jump on that virtual bandwagon now of everything is virtual. So why not do it with grandma, grandpa? Why not do it with auntie? I definitely, put that little caveat out there of being on a secure platform for sure. Right. But Zoom calls are fantastic. They're doing great things with videos and watching movies together. It's amazing. I really am a huge proponent of creating events that grandma, grandpa can see and maybe kind of give tips. So if that's you videotaping your child riding their bike or building something in the backyard, send it to grandma, grandpa. They can send it back doing something too. Another one that doesn't cost money or wouldn't take too much technology is grandma, grandpa maybe reading a book, especially if you have little ones.
Right.
Read that book to them, read it or videotape themselves reading or singing a song maybe that the family loves, and sending it to the grandkids. And then you've got that discourse, that communication still, and hopefully eliminate or at least reduce some of those stressful and anxiety-inducing moments.
I was thinking about, just everyone being under one roof, and maybe Dr. Ebanks, you can help me out with this, but you may raise your kids one way and your mother's like, that's not what I would do, Dr. Ebanks, do you have some thoughts on that, on differentiating roles and boundaries?
I have questions about that.
Okay.
As Ms. Edwards was sharing regarding, how to be helpful, but sometimes some people want to help too much, especially if now they're in your home because you want to keep them safe, but now they want to kind of do things their way, and you might have a set schedule and you want to try to maintain things as a parent. So it's trying to figure out and have those conversations. Mom, that's a great idea. Perhaps we could wait to do that on the weekend. I'm trying to keep them on the same schedule. I've learned even with my children that when we're at my parents' house, I just follow mommy, abuela and abuelito's rules, but when they're in my house, I explain to them, we try to stick to this, time to go to bed, and as they see it. But it's about being gentle and being patient. If the one word that has come out of this situation is about being patient, but you do want to maintain boundaries, and setting up and having that explanation of roles. You can help. Oh my God, when you cook dinner, which my mom does, and I totally believe her in the kitchen. My dad, he wants to clean everything. Oh, go ahead. That's so great. And show that appreciation for the things that they do. I think that kind of brings a comfort, because if you're inviting a person to your house, and you don't want them to feel like a guest, don't necessarily treat them like, don't do this, don't touch this. Oh my God. You want to, they're your family, even if you have a friend that's staying with you, because they may be away from their family and they're alone in their home, have those open, honest conversations. And I honestly say, have times to have real talk, have a family time conversation, have family meetings where you can ask each other questions, be able to share what did you like or what you didn't like, those plans and those schedules, as Miss Edwards said. I heard a funny story from Jamie Foxx. I was watching one of his Instagram Live, and he talked about someone took his cookie and how he was, mad, and he turned on the lights in the middle of the night trying to investigate who took his cookie. But so, it's important to, say to, you put something in the refrigerator that you're going to look forward to. Right. You're going to be a little swole if someone ate that cookie.
Definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the idea of incorporating them too, to try to kind of mitigate a little bit of strife that might happen, because they want to feel wanted, right? They want to feel useful, and you want them to, because like you said, they are family, you love them. But I think like incorporating them and maybe something they can teach the kids. If it's the cooking, like you get cooking time at grandma an hour a day. Look at that, give them kind of like that ownership of, this is your time, whatever you want is fine.
So we got those parent roles figured out, and setting boundaries is a good thing. How do you have those conversations when it's nice to have the roles, but how do you get to setting those boundaries, and how do you bring up conversations on, okay, mom, here's the deal. Okay, dad, here's the deal. This is my house. As for me and my, how do you have those conversations? How do you start?
Yeah.
Because I know someone's out there trying to figure out, okay, that sounds great, but how do we start really talking to our parents about following our rules in our homes?
I think it's important to first ask them how they're feeling and how this has impacted them and the transition. Like, what would make them feel more comfortable? I always like to say, start with a positive before you kind of go in with some comments. I don't want to say negative, but some, comments and things that you may want to share. So I think it's starting off with a positive, saying that you thank them and you appreciate that they're with you, because, how you kept them safe for so many, they kept you safe for so many years growing up. And how them being there is a comfort to you more than probably it's a comfort to them, because they want to maybe be in their house. They like their neighborhood. They liked wherever they were. So again, I think starting with a positive and then saying, this is how, I have set it up, and how are you accustomed to, what are your thoughts on that? And it might be different than what you anticipate, but to be open and to listen, to really hear them.
Mm-hmm. To build on what you're saying, I always think about like any tough conversation, especially like with parents or especially with someone that's a different generation than I am, of really kind of presenting them with the problem. Like not even saying, oh, I need you to do something, but hey, I'm trying to figure out how to best get my kids to nap, to do some sort of academics, and also to play. Like, what do you think I should do? What are some ways that I can help them, have their alone time, but also have time with you, as my mom or my dad. And that way they're kind of engaged in, okay, I'm not the problem. I'm helping you solve a problem. And so there's kind of like no blame in it. It's just, hey, we're all in this situation together. Like, let's just figure it out. And if it works, cool. If not, we'll just try something different, kind of like keep that mentality with it.
Nice. I like Dr. Ebanks and just the mentality of being not like starting kind of, not so rough, easing in. What's it called? The sandwich technique, the nice stuff, the not so good stuff, and then, making them feel good at the end.
Yeah.
So we're talking about roles. Now let's talk about roles in terms of parents going from just parents to teachers to like, the principal, disciplinarians. All these different roles are in one place. How do you manage the stress of being all those roles, and how do you kind of differentiate those roles with your children who may not understand that now you're taking on so many different responsibilities that other people prior to this have taken on?
Yeah, you're totally right, because you're shifting, right, from a parent who still has your roles and your rules, but now you're implementing some sort of expectation that's academic or that's behavioral, that's different than that expectation the kid had for you as my like mom or dad or auntie. The stressors that come with that, it can be internal, external, because I also think about that, that prefrontal cortex is moving and shaking so much more now because your entire environment shifted. So kind of like combating that internal stressor, I think is my first go-to of how are you going to keep yourself calm? How are you going to have your own oasis, so to speak? in this new, somewhat like sedentary lifestyle, but very busy, because I'm sure like work expectations are still there.
Right.
And then now you have work expectations in the same place as home expectations. So I think my go-to is also going back to that schedule, right? So incorporating the kid in the schedule and treating it as such, as this is our work schedule. You get to come to work with mommy today, and this is what we have to get done. I have to do my computer time. You have your tablet time. And getting them really involved in that process and kind of explaining that rationale for why we do have to have rules now that school is at home. I think establishing some sort of like different type of communication so you can kind of articulate the difference and that balance between, this is mommy time and this is you have work to do, mommy has work to do. So I'm a huge proponent on setting a time. When it's work time, it's work time. When it's playtime, it's playtime. When it's nap time, everybody's taking a nap. Everybody's relaxing. And that really is a way to, you can shift that according to your family dynamic, but establishing at least those three components. So everyone can kind of get something accomplished.
Right.
Okay.
Dr. Ebanks, do you find that children are kind of are easy to follow schedules and rules and can adapt to changing situations, or is it difficult for children to do?
I think that they are flexible and can adapt. I think it's when you're consistent with it, with discussing the schedule and, as Ms. Edwards said, to making them a part of the schedule, and putting that schedule, on a board, on a piece of paper, having them write it out. Like, what is the subject you're going to work on today? And again, keeping it where it's age appropriate, because you might have children of different ages in your home. And I think it's important to have it make sense to them based on their age and what their responsibilities are, in the morning, we discuss our, during breakfast, what the schedule looks like today. And what the schedule will look like on Friday is different than it did necessarily on Thursday or Monday or Tuesday, so letting them know, okay, what's due for you today? What did you finish yesterday? So it doesn't have to carry over into today, what specials, incorporating that outside time, letting them know what time do they expect, can anticipate going outside, or, having tea in the house. And again, it's also determined by the weather. It's also determined by a Zoom meeting that a parent, may have, the shared, computer. Some teachers are having lunchtime with their students, or a class meeting. So again, making sure that there's some flexibility in that schedule, but really starting a pattern of discussing the schedule ahead of time, because a lot of parents have just found out that their children are not going back to school for the rest of the year. At first, they thought there was an end to this, not quite yet. So now it's like, okay, I still have another 6 weeks. What is that 6 weeks going to look like? And sometimes taking it week by week. You don't have to plan June 30th now. Let's just work on, what day is today? May 15th.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that you spoke to that, because that's the thing that I think adults as parents have that mindset of like, this is our schedule. We have this coming up. We have this event. And now that you've shifted to, not only am I the parent and my teacher, you said special teacher. I'm a special teacher now. I'm your friend now, because you no longer get to play with your friends. So really taking on all these roles, take it week by week, what's coming up. And I think like going back to having those set events at least happening each day, the kid can kind of look forward to, oh, I don't get to hang out with my friends, but I get to play. I get to play with mommy. We get to, build something together. And it could be something that's, super inexpensive that you have around the house, something outside or gardening. Perfect time to start gardening.
Right.
And kind of going back to something that Kim stated earlier, is when you're scheduling, schedule that one-on-one time with each child is important, especially if you have children of multiple ages, of what they like to do, and also schedule time for yourself and have the children schedule time to be alone and play by themselves, you know, or take breaks during the day. That schedule has to be very flexible and kind of incorporate kind of what a normal day would have looked like, but also because of these circumstances, what other things can be done, and realizing everything doesn't have to happen all in one day. You know, you have 7 days, 24 hours now, truly, you know, so figuring out what that looks like, and not feeling like, okay, I have to do, if I have 4 children, all 4 children, I have to do one-on-one time with every, you know, all in one day. No, say, okay, Monday is one-on-one time with this, you know, child number 1, child number 2, not child, you know, so you break it up.
Now, we expect children to follow our schedules. How important is it for parents who make the schedule to actually follow it and stick to it?
Yeah, I was going to say, really being empathetic to your child, but also have grace for yourself. Because I think that we, as adults, we know how to get things done. But now that we're incorporating someone else's schedule, someone being our children, we can't get things done in the same capacity as before. So kind of being creative with how am I going to keep myself accountable and also keep them accountable. So I think, like we said, kind of having those set times, but also make them functional. I'm all about the function. Like, does it make sense for our family dynamic? Does it make sense for what's going on in the world today? If there's certain times in the day that you have to get something done on a computer, that's screen time. You know, that is ABCs, that is Sesame Street, that is screen time for everybody because right. I have to be on my computer at, 10 o'clock. But also if you're someone, like we said, keeping yourself healthy, you want to go outside or you want to do everyone's all about the workout videos now. I myself found some great workout videos. But have some sort of like fun time, mindfulness time, that everyone can do it. I think that's a kind of a way to make sure you keep yourself accountable, but also it makes sense for your family.
So we're talking about conflict, and I'm thinking about all the states that are starting to open up, and there may be some conflict between parents about like, when are you going to step outside of the house? Maybe the father doesn't want to, do normal go back to eat in a restaurant or whatever, and the mother's like, we can venture out. How do you deal with conflicts of like, when do you end quarantine time, and communicating that to each other and even your children who see their friends out, going to the malls or doing certain activities, and maybe you're still staying at home?
Yeah, I think I would have to co-sign what was said earlier about having those family meetings. I think that is the ideal time to have a sit down, and have everyone's voice heard, even the children, because like they want to see what's going on. Like you said, if they see someone else playing, they want to know why they can't either. And kind of going to like the family dynamic. What are the family values? What's most important? Because a family that has, the in-laws living with them might have different values than a family that, it's just a mom and 2 children. As far as like when you feel safe to go out and when you feel safe to kind of take a moment to yourself and, stop wearing your gloves. I know.
I think that again is important regarding communication and conversation, and to be able to hear what the concerns are, and coming up with a timeline, just like the states, they're saying this is happening in phases. What is the family comfortable in doing in phases? And for both parents, I always say that parents don't have to agree, but it's important to discuss and validate how each other is feeling about it. So it's not to, negate or to disregard a concern that one person has, especially with this time. It's like, okay, that's a valid concern. So what does that look like for you? What would you be your initial plan? And let's discuss what my plan is, and let's see how we could, navigate this so that we, the children and we are feeling comfortable and safe. So I think it's very important to have that conversation about, just because the states are opening up doesn't mean we're going to open up,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I was just thinking too of, when you say the states are opening job, right? And so like we've all been working from home for the most part, if we have that luxury, but some jobs do require you to go in. So like that conversation is very real if, one parent is now going into work and the other isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those conversations are definitely starting to need to happen because the states are opening up in phases, and you're going to have those discussions. And so when you have conflict, I know we talked about the dynamics, but let's just talk about some step-by-step kind of guides to dealing with conflict. There's a problem in the home. What should you do when you see something and you want to say something, but you don't know what to say? What should you do first?
I would say kind of take a step back first, because, everyone's emotions are kind of heightened at this point. And so what's a problem today may not be a problem 2 days from now. So kind of take that initial first glance and ask yourself, is this something that I need to bring up? Or is this something that, we can talk about maybe at our family meeting, or something that maybe I just need to adjust my expectations? And then once you've decided whether you will wait or whether you need to bring it up, how do you tactfully do that in a way to kind of stimulate productive conversation and not just, accusing someone of doing something or starting the conversation in maybe a negative way? I think really productivity is going to be key when there is no out. So if you start something and get sticky, we're all still right here looking at each other,
Right.
During that situation.
Let's talk about what's productive versus what's destructive, because people may not understand out there. Like, I said something, so that's better than saying nothing. But it's not always just saying something; it's how you say it. So let's talk about productive talking strategies or constructive ways to dealing with issues in the family. How do we talk to people? How do we address issues?
Yeah.
Constructively.
My go-to is those I statements. There's no accusatory statements. There's no assumptions. You're just stating what you felt when an action took place or when, things were said. I felt this way when this happened. Was this your intention? Or did you know this is how I would feel in this situation? And stop there. Let them kind of receive that information, because a lot of times, hopefully, that wasn't their intention, right? So that kind of gives them that moment to say, "Oh man, that's not what I meant." Like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. That wasn't my intention." Or if it was, now let's talk about it. Like, know what? I was kind of in a bad space too, actually, when I said it.
Right. I like to say, talk about what you want instead of what you think is stolen from you. Mm-hmm. So like, I want this instead of you took my time. You took my, like, talk about what you want and be vulnerable instead of what someone's taken from you and being a victim. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are some other ways to deal with conflict?
I would say not to avoid it. I think as Kim stated, you want to evaluate and take a step back and really understand what your feelings are about it or what your concerns are about it, and not to let it, and figure out how to appropriately discuss it, especially if it's something that you deem important. And not to avoid it and let it fester and just continue to build and build and build. I think that does not help matters any, in the long run, because it will eventually, kind of rear its head, when it has nothing to do with, something else. So I think that's, important to, not avoid it, but learn how to appropriately, approach it, how to delicately, approach it.
You think it's appropriate to communicate like that you're unable to talk about something, but you want to return back to the conversation later?
Certainly. Yeah, I would certainly say that. I think it's important to not, because sometimes when people are there at that moment, it's your mind is racing and you end up being very, perhaps even wordy because you're not sure how to communicate it. And sometimes things can get lost there. And because, your emotions are heightened, that then can lead to saying things that perhaps you wouldn't have said, before. So I think, yeah, certainly, like, just realizing how to say things is very important. I mean, that to me is 90% of it is how you're communicating, from your body language, your facial expressions, all those things, take a part of how the person is going to receive it, and where they are, to be able to receive the information. So.
Right. I think you're right. If you can't communicate, that may lead to a lot of issues, and definitely not talking about it could lead to even more issues, because we all know when something's wrong, right? We can see it, and it happens in our disposition. So talking about things is so important. If they don't know how to talk, are there resources that the MECCA Group can help, deal with conflict? Can they call someone and maybe have a chat or start a survey, counseling session or something like that? Or what are the resources that the MECCA Group can help out with families in conflict?
We have excellent clinicians like Ms. Edwards to help to even develop a behavior management system in the home, because some children might have diagnosable behavior disorders that parents may need to know how to develop a system, how to develop a reward system, how to help a child, that may have a, disorder. So certainly we have excellent clinicians like Ms. Edwards. And again, for people to know that it doesn't just have to be a diagnosis to receive services. You could feel a certain way, you could, be thinking a certain way, and you just want some kind of help, some guidance, some information, on how to go about, having a conversation. So we certainly have our office staff and our clinical team available to take calls. We do teletherapy as well. So by visiting our website at the MECCA Group LLC.com, or giving us a call at 202-529-3117, you can certainly speak to someone on our team about getting started. We also have resources available on our website. I can certainly post more resources, on Facebook. We also are part of Psychology Today, where there are a number of clinicians in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area that provide excellent service. And then you could kind of tailor it or get someone that is tailored to what you're seeking.
Nice. Kim, do you want to leave us with a quick tip or any last words of advice for families who are struggling with conflict and don't know what to do, and really want to change, the outcomes?
Yeah, for sure. I think two big takeaways is one, having that moment to yourself and allocating that time. Everyone needs that time, especially in these times and socially, to be alone. And also take that time to praise, especially whether it's your children, whether it's your grandparents, your parents. Praise and celebrate others for doing what they need to do to maintain somewhat of their sanity and establish this new normalcy.
Well, I'm going to praise you today for a great job in explaining how we can deal with conflict, and also praise Dr. Ebanks for all what she had to share today. And we'll see you next week. I hope you got something out of this. And I hope that everyone will stay well and love each other.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Brandon.
We'll see you next week, everyone.
Bye-bye.